Jake Paul wins the latest fight. What does his future look like, and who will stop his winning run? Jake Paul has always been controversial. Now with his win over Woodley, it's starting to look like nobody could beat him and shut his mouth. Let's take a look at his future fights. Jake Paul has defeated Tyron Woodley. Jake Paul, a social media sensation, defeated former UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley on Sunday night's Showtime pay-per-view event, winning by split decision. Paul was the aggressor for the majority of the fight despite taking a couple of strong shots. Woodley demanded a rematch as soon as possible, but Paul responded by saying he had his chance. Jake Paul was tested to his limits for the first time in his professional career. Following his victory over Tyron Woodley, Jake Paul began to consider his options for what might come next. Tommy Fury, Tyson Fury's half-brother, fought on the undercard of the main event last night and could be a contender. By the end of the night, both boxers had gotten into it. He had to fight through 8 rounds against former UFC champion Tyron Woodley, but the 24-year-old social media celebrity turned boxer was able to pull off a split decision victory in the end. The scorecards were a little contentious, as Paul appeared to be well ahead in total rounds, but in the end 2 judges awarded him the victory, 77-75 and 78-74, with the third official awarding the victory to Woodley with a 77-75 score to give him the victory. Can you tell me where that judge is? When Paul heard about the divided decision, he expressed his displeasure. I have no idea what they were looking at. However, I was victorious nonetheless. I'm at a loss for what to say. He's a formidable opponent. It was a more difficult battle than I had anticipated. My legs were acting strangely. I'm at a loss as to what's wrong with me. Tyron deserves our utmost regard. He's a member of the Hall of Fame. He put up a valiant effort. I've nothing but admiration for him. There is no ill will between us. This is the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. Woodley, on the other hand, was dissatisfied with his defeat and practically wanted a rematch immediately following it. Afterwards, Woodley confronted Paul once more and requested another fight, which Paul agreed to on the condition that the now 4-0 boxer receive his opponent's name tattooed on his body. They had made a wager before the fight that the loser would get the winner's name tattooed on their body. Prior to all the commotion in the ring, Paul and Woodley fought it out for the entire 8 rounds with only a few genuinely noteworthy exchanges occurring throughout the course of the fight. Although Paul showed a lot more respect for Woodley's power than he had shown in his previous 2 bouts, Paul was still able to paw at the canvas with a strong lead jab while remaining out of range of any counter blows from Woodley. Woodley did throw a powerful right hand towards the conclusion of the first round, but Paul was able to get out of the way before it could connect. Instead of throwing single punches, Woodley was putting together combos that included numerous shots to the body and a rush of punches that culminated in a headshot for Paul. Although he wasn't doing much harm, Paul's jabs were obviously getting Woodley's attention. As the fight progressed into the 3rd round, Woodley began to throw his punches with a little more conviction, albeit he was still failing to connect on a consistent basis. When Woodley finally moved forward, Paul nailed him with a well-timed uppercut that landed flush with the target. Just as it had appeared that Paul was gaining control, Woodley stepped forward and delivered a powerful overhand right that grazed Paul just behind the ear of Paul. Paul appeared to have been rocked for a brief moment, but he was able to escape any further major punches before the 4th round came to a conclusion. Paul made the required changes to come out strong in the following round, sticking his jab in Woodley's face and hitting with a good left hook during an intense sequence. Woodley's activity halted as Paul began to land more punches, despite the fact that he continued to march forward without connecting with anything convincing. The movement of Paul suggested he was sapping energy in the later rounds, yet he was still able to keep Woodley at bay with his jab and then occasionally unleash a powerful right hand that would knock the former UFC champion to the ground. Woodley's exact plan played out again and again, as he would launch a powerful punch but then fail to follow through with anything meaningful after it. A good left jab followed by a massive left hook with less than 2 minutes left in the fight had Woodley shaking his head as if to suggest the shot didn't land. But it was obviously still a glancing strike, according to Paul. As the final bell rang, Paul called out to Woodley asking him to chase after him, but nothing occurred as the bout drew to an end. Although Paul quickly leaped up on the ropes to celebrate, his actions elicited a mixed response from the crowd, given that the battle went the full 8 rounds. Paul had hinted at a hiatus after a very hectic 18 months that had seen him spend the most of his time in training and preparation for fights. It's difficult to predict when he'll consider another fight or perhaps a rematch with Woodley, especially given his recent comments. To be honest with you, we'll see. Paul remarked. "I've been boxing for about 18 months at this point. I haven't put a halt to it. I think I'll take a break for a moment. After my brother Logan and Floyd Mayweather, this is the second largest pay-per-view event in the whole calendar year." Who will defeat Jake Paul? The aftermath of Jake Paul's split decision victory against Tyron Woodley is focused on attention on who will face next. There's a large list of potential opponents. Jake Paul entered the boxing ring for the first time in 2018, and he did so in order to battle other content creators on YouTube. Having learned from that experience, he'd gone on to battling athletes and talented fighters. Even though his knockout victories over Nate Robinson and Ben Askren were extremely remarkable, his split decision victory over Tyron Woodley really elevated his profile and established him as a formidable opponent. It's not hard to find boxers who want a piece of the Paul, especially if it means you'll be in line for a good payoff whether you win or lose the fight. There are, nevertheless, some strong candidates in this field. A large number of fighters have thrown their hats into the ring and expressed an interest in taking on the online sensation. But as of this writing, nothing's been decided. Jake does not have a fight scheduled or publicized at this time. There have been speculations flying that he owes Woodley a rematch, and the former UFC champion even hinted that it could happen following his loss. But this hasn't been any indication that it will happen anytime soon. In addition, T. Wood will need to get a tattoo in order for it to happen. On top of that, there's been talk of a fight with KSI developing for quite some time. The British YouTuber demonstrated a victory over Jake's brother Logan in his first professional fight. Since then, Jake and KSI have continued to throw rhetorical jabs about a potential showdown. While one of those two situations appears to be the most logical, there are a number of other possibilities to consider. Jake's become embroiled in an online dispute with Tommy Fury, who recently won his fight on the undercard of Paul vs. Woodley, and the YouTuber has said that a battle would be in order. Jake, on the other hand, stated that he wanted to see Fury's fame in the United States given to rise first, which is likely to have happened following his own victory. Conor McGregor is also an option if you want to fight. Logan and Jake have been calling him out for years. The Irish boxing legend was quick to dismiss the notion of a bout with them, but he's recently softened his attitude. He was defeated in his last bout due to a horrific injury, but there's no doubt that if they were to meet in the ring and trade punches, it would be a spectacular show. McGregor even tweeted throughout the fight implying he was considering a rematch. Time will tell who will put Paul on the mat eventually. What's your take on the fight? Jake Paul and the future of this man? Is he a fighter or a social media celebrity?